questions. So this is where I have to make a judgment call. And so what I will probably do is, we're not going to go into things that are historically relevant in purification. Like, for example, well water. There's a whole chapter about wells, and when does a well get impure? When does it get pure? How do you purify a well? What happens if a mouse drops in a well? What happens if a cockroach falls in a well, or a bird? And if it's this big or this big. So there's some things that I have to skip over. Now, if there are other things that you want to discuss, you can always ask, because what I want to deal with, what I want to talk about, is that which is relevant to your situation. So if there is an aspect that is relevant to you, and you're like, I need to know this for my practice, that's what we should focus on. And same thing with prayer, for example, if you, for example, we can talk about like janaza and Eid prayer and these things, but it's probably better that we start with the things that you do on a regular basis. Okay, that being said, let's begin. We spoke, where did we leave off last time? Is that the last thing? Or was it menstruation? I think that was, subhanAllah, I had one teacher that used to ask us, where did we leave off? And if everybody took too much time to answer, he would close his book and leave. I won't do that, but he would close his book to say, okay, you guys haven't been reviewing, so you forgot. We'd be like, oh, where are we? What are we like? So I'm just kidding. Okay. So we talked about khufs, then we spoke about menstrual bleeding, and we talked about why that's so important. What things are unlawful during menstruation. You can go on the ISOC YouTube page and watch yesterday's if you didn't get it down or you need to review it. And there's a couple of things that we talked about. You can do tayammum if you are not able to take a bath when you're outside. We talked about the minimum time for the period, and 10 days is the maximum. There are other schools of thought that believe that the maximum is longer, so 14 days. Okay, but the Hanafi school is 10 days. And most people generally, like the heavy bleeding, will be done by that time. And anything that comes after 10 days, what is it called? Or you don't have to say what it's called. How do you treat it? Yes, like a nosebleed. Meaning the same way that you would, what would you do if you had a nosebleed? It would break your wudu. You would clean it up. That's how you would treat bleeding. Irregular uterine bleeding called istihada. Istihada. Istihada, it means it's not really the period, but it's something that is resembling a period, but it doesn't take the same rulings. So, dysfunctional uterine bleeding, istihada, meaning the blood that comes after 10 days of a period, if it's still bleeding, even if it's spotting, even if it's a different color that's not red, all of that counts as blood, and it's like a continuous nosebleed. It does not prevent the permissibility of fasting, praying, intercourse, or tawaf. So you can still come inside a masjid, that's fine, you can make tawaf. If such bleeding continues for the duration of an entire prayer time, then the woman must perform wudu at the beginning of each prayer time, just like someone with chronic urinary incontinence, constant diarrhea, constant gas, or continuous bleeding. So what's happening here? This is something that is called being ma'adhur. Maybe you've heard this. It's called being excused. It's a term called ma'adhur. What happens if your nosebleed is constantly flowing, your gums are constantly bleeding? How do you make wudu in that situation? What do you do? This is the whole point. But then what happens if your blood keeps coming after you make wudu? Then what? You are excused. That's why it's called ma'adhur. It means excused. Because there are some people, whether it's someone after the period, whether it's a nosebleed, gums bleeding, or someone has, what's it called? When the person has constant gas, constant urine leakage. Okay, so there are some people, for example, if they just move, there is urine leaking from their body. Okay, so they try to make wudu, and as soon as they move a little bit, urine comes out. They're standing up to pray. The minute they move a little bit, something comes out. Whether it's gas, urine, blood, anything like that. What happens when it's coming so much? Because you're supposed to technically stop and wait. So if you're having a nosebleed, you cannot make wudu during a nosebleed, because something that is canceling the wudu is coming, so you have to wait till it stops, then make wudu. Okay? In the same way, let's say a young man wants to make wudu. He goes to the bathroom, and there's still some urine dripping. Okay, and he just wants to be quick, so he goes and he just kind of does his thing, and then he just leaves and then goes make wudu. But the urine is still coming out like dripping. You're not supposed to make wudu in that situation. You're supposed to wait a little bit, wait for a couple of minutes. For some people, it might be 2 minutes. For some people, 5 minutes. Some people, 10 minutes. Okay, so whatever it is, because once you make wudu while something is canceling it or breaking it, your wudu is not valid. So what do you do in a situation where it's constantly flowing? Okay, you get a cut and it's just bleeding. First of all, if you have a Band-Aid, if it's something you can cover with a Band-Aid, then you put on the Band-Aid and then don't look. Just assume whatever happens under the Band-Aid stays under the Band-Aid. You don't look. Some people keep looking, checking. No, it's Band-Aid, that's it. If it's in your gums, if it's so much that you're just constantly spitting blood, that's different. But sometimes you get a little, you have some bleeding, you spit, and then, like we said, you don't obsess, spitting again and again, looking for it. Once it's kind of goes away, don't try to excite it again, okay? So here's what you do. If a woman is constantly bleeding, it's not her period, it's istihada, or constant dripping of urine, such that you cannot even make wudu and pray, except that the breaker comes out, the breaker of wudu comes out. So it may not be constant bleeding. It may just be every time I move, something comes out. Okay? In that case, you wait till the end of the prayer time, the first time it happens. Okay? How do you establish? The first time you happened, you wait till the end of the prayer time, and then you make your wudu, and then you still pray. Okay? And even though it's not valid, and in the next prayer time, if the excuse stops, you make it up. Okay, so bleeding. You're waiting. Right now, for example, it's Asr time. Okay, it's going to be in about half an hour. It's going to be Maghrib. You're bleeding. Okay, don't pray now. Wait until 7:50. Then you make wudu and you say, okay, this is the last possible time. I'm going to pray anyway. Is that valid or not valid? No, it's not valid. It's not. But here's what you have to do, because you have no other choice, no other time. So you still pray, and in the next time now, when Maghrib starts, if the excuse is still going for all of Maghrib, then your prayer was valid, because you have an excuse. You're an excused person. Do you understand it? You see how this works? But, Jazakallah khairan. Thank you. Appreciate it. So, but if the excuse stops, it means you're not an excused person. You have to make up what you missed, okay? Now, here's the other thing. What happens if it's been going for an entire prayer time and you just had to make wudu even though it's breaking? Now you take the ruling of someone called a ma'dhur person, excused. So from then on, you just have to make wudu at the beginning of each prayer time once, and then you can pray as much as you want, even if the excuse keeps coming out. It's like it didn't break your wudu. Any questions? Yes. Yes, this is outside of the 10 days of menstruation. Then, any blood that comes after the 10 days or any color, it's still considered breaking a wudu, but it's like a nosebleed. It's not a period. Yeah. So does this make sense now? So all you have to do is make wudu once during the beginning of the prayer time. Once you've been established, like it came so much that it filled an entire prayer time. Next prayer time, you make wudu once, and then you pray and you read Quran as much as you want. And as long as the blood coming out, it's like it's not even there anymore. It's like the bleeding doesn't even count anymore. Now, when next prayer time comes, you make wudu once, again, beginning of the prayer time, and you go. When the prayer time ends, your wudu breaks. And then you have to make it again for the next one, and for the next one. So Do you see what I'm saying? You have to make wudu at the beginning of each prayer time. Now, what happens if you have constant urine leaking and you're ma'dhur, you're excused? So you just make wudu once and you don't even have to change your undergarment. So for example, let's say a person has constant urine dripping, constant bleeding. Technically speaking, then even when your clothes are soiled, it's also forgiven. Because what are you supposed to do, right? Allah, the Sharia is merciful on that person. Don't worry. Even if you didn't clean it, you should try to reduce it. But even if you couldn't, that's okay. Now, what happens if you pass gas in that situation? So you have the excuse because you're constantly urine dripping or constantly bleeding. What happens if you break your wudu in a different way? Then your wudu is broken. Then it's broken. So if for the excuse, it doesn't break. But for other than the excuse, it still breaks. So then you have to make wudu again. Okay. Now, if ever a time comes where you do not see the excuse, meaning the blood or the urine, the thing that's going constantly, if ever a time comes where one prayer time passes and you do not even see it a single time, then your excuse status breaks and you go back to being a normal person. Okay? So a woman has constant bleeding such that she cannot even make wudu and pray, but the blood comes out. She becomes excused in the next prayer time. She makes wudu at the beginning of the prayer time. But then a prayer time comes where she didn't see blood come out for the entire time. She is no longer excused. Now she makes wudu every time blood comes out after that. Okay? Until she ever gets to a situation again where the entire prayer time it's coming out. And then she can go back on excuse status. It's confusing. But at least you heard it once. Okay? So it doesn't consolidate right now. It'll consolidate later on. Okay. Any other questions about that idea? Yeah. Good question. Ooh, you want to finish the question? Yep. Yes. Okay, very good question. Okay, in the Hanafi school, we don't divide between colors. It actually becomes much easier. Any color you see is a period. That's it. Any color, even if it's green, even if it's yellow, even if it's anything, if it's not the normal color that a person sees all the time, so a color comes and that's it, the period has begun, as long as it's in the days of the period. So if it's like, yeah, it is that time of the month, then something comes, that period has begun. But if it's like, no, that can't be, the period just passed, then that's irregular. Okay? So you don't have to wait for heavy flow, you don't have to wait for red to come. Once the color comes, you start it, and then you go 10 days, and at the 10 days, it's officially done, even if it's still coming. But the ruling is done. When you go back to praying, fasting, everything else. Cool? Mm-hmm. Different school of thought. So the Shafi'i school, I believe, they say only red. They say only the red, and the other colors don't count. But no, in the Hanafi school, any color is like that. In fact, what we'll do, maybe another time, we'll do a detailed workshop on menstruation just for sisters, if they have deeper questions. Mm-hmm. What's that? That breaks the fast. Once you see a color in the time of the period, it breaks the fast. Right? And then you have to make it up. Okay, now we're going to talk about something that applies to all of us, which is najasa. Okay, the idea of filth. What is filthy? What is not? So basically, there are technically two types of filth: heavy filth and light filth. But light filth, you will almost never come across anymore. Okay, so what is heavy filth? Spilled blood that comes out of your body is heavy filth, major filth. And it's called najasa mughallada or ghalida. Feces, no matter whose feces or what feces, is heavy filth. Khamr, wine, is heavy filth, and also all intoxicating drinks. So that beer that got spilled on me, that's intoxicating too, even though it's not wine. Sexual fluid from the man or the woman that comes out, so sperm, semen, or a woman's sexual fluid is also filth, heavy filth. Okay? Now, wait, what else is there? There's also, they didn't put urine. Urine is also heavy filth. I don't know why they didn't put that. Now, what is light filth? The urine of an animal who is permissible to eat. So a cow's urine, horse's urine, goat urine, for example, that's light filth. But generally speaking, when's the last time a cow peed on you? Okay, not very often. But in those days, you know, when you're in farms and stuff like that, you had horses, it might get on you. The urine of horses and the droppings of bird whose meat is not permissible to eat. Let me ask you something. The droppings of a bird, is it pure minor filth or major filth? Actually, the dropping of the sparrows and the pigeons and the seagulls, it's actually pure. Pure, completely. They could drop on you and then you're praying and it's fine. You know why? Because it's impossible to avoid it. So the Sharia said, if we make that major impurity, it'll create a problem. Because remember, even when you go in the masjid, remember in the olden days, masjids used to have courtyards. And people are praying in the courtyard. So that means now filth is dropping and people are stepping on it. So it would become almost impossible. Even in the Kaaba, although one of the miracles I heard is that birds don't actually go on top of the Kaaba for some reason. Allah knows best. But in the Haram, birds do droppings. Now it would be very difficult. So when something is impossible to avoid, the Sharia makes it easier. So the only ones, the birds whose droppings are impure are the ones who like an eagle, you know, owl, the ones that you don't eat, the ones that are kind of birds of prey that you don't often. When's the last time an owl, you know, pooped on you? It's not very common. So now, what do we have to know about this? A place that has discernible filth. So let's say, for example, some sort of filth gets on me. Okay, some sort of filth of any of these categories. Once you can see it, then you have to remove the body of that filth, even if you wash it only once. So let's say, for example, someone bleeds and blood comes on their clothing. You can see the red. What do? You have to take off the body of that. So you take it off and wash it. Now, if it stains red, or an underwear is stained, for example, with bodily fluids, or something like this, the stain is not impure. So it may be the color doesn't go away, but the body is gone. That's all you need to do. You don't need to keep going. In fact, you don't even need to use soap. So let's say an underwear is soiled. Let's say clothing has blood on it. You don't even need to use soap. We use soap out of what? Not out of religion, but out of hygiene. Okay, so that doesn't mean don't use soap. It means the Sharia does not require it because Sharia is for all times and places. Not everybody they didn't even have soap in many places back then, right? So this is what you have to do. You have to make sure the body comes off of it, okay? Except what is difficult to remove, which is like a stain. For example, stains would not be able to do it, okay? Next thing is, yes. Now, a place where the filth is not discernible. So what's an example of indiscernible filth? Discernible means you cannot detect it. Let me give you an example. Let's say a drop of urine gets on your pants, and then a little time passes. Can you tell where that drop of urine is? You have no idea. Okay, you lose it. You lose track of it. So in that situation where you cannot see the filth, the way that you remove it is that you wash it and you squeeze the area 3 times. Okay? So placing the affected area under flowing water such that water goes on the area and then leaves it and then comes under for a total of 3 times, takes the place. So here, okay, let me give you this example. Let me step over here. Okay. So let's say, for example, that some urine has gotten on this part of my trousers or my garment. All I have to do, you don't have to go and pour water directly on it. Just take it, that exact area, and spot wash it. Okay? Now, if you don't want to create a big scene, especially if you have khakis, okay, that looks bad, right? First of all, if it's a small amount, less than this, it does not even prevent the prayer. So look at your own hand, look at the inside of your palm, and it's different for everybody. So if you're a bigger person, you're lucky. You get more excused. Okay? So basically, the reason they said that was because they said, look, it's impossible that every single little drop, like, it's very difficult. Now, some schools of thought are very strict. They say every little drop you have to purify. Because Allah said to the Prophet, purify your garment. But then, here's the question. The Sahaba, they used to sometimes use water, and sometimes they would use what when they go to the bathroom? Stones. They would use stones. So, if you went number 2, and then you wiped yourself with a stone, how clean do you think you would scientifically be? Not very much. You would just get the main body of the feces out, but the majority, like, there'd still be traces of it there, okay? Same thing as if you use what? Today? Toilet paper, same thing. So this is a proof that you can use toilet paper, and if you don't use water, you're not gonna go to hell. You're not going to, you get what I'm saying? This idea that Muslims must use water, using water is sunnah. But it's not fard. The only time it's fard is if you mess yourself up in a big way, okay? So then what the scholars said was, wait, if the Sahaba used stones, it means that they had impurity on their body. They were walking around with it. And not only that, that they would sit in, they would be sweating, they'd be riding camels, and the animal is sweating, you're sweating, so it's spreading all over your clothing, okay? But this was real life. You couldn't avoid this. So the Sharia was easier. And later on, scholars started to theorize, and they actually made it a bit more difficult than it was. Okay, so a lot of these teachings about purification are not taught by the Prophet ﷺ. It's later scholars had to derive, what do you do? How do you clean something? The Prophet ﷺ did not show us necessarily how to do all of the different types of cleaning. But what happens is, so if it's less than this area, your prayer is valid if you leave it, but it's good to wash it. If it's more than this area, your prayer is not valid with it, and you must wash it, okay? But let's say you get a drop, and you're like, out of taqwa, you want to wash that area. So you take it, and then you spot wash. So what you do, I should close this before, okay, let's do it like this. So what you do, you can pour a little bit of water. It doesn't have to be a huge amount of water. Just pour a little bit of water, pour it, and then just like that. 2, like that. 3, like that. Remember, they didn't have access to a lot of water. So this idea that you have to put a bucket on it, no, just pour a little bit. Now, if you have a tap, so you just have to put the amount of water, I just said, in a flowing way. So that would be like 2 seconds under a tap. Shh, like that, done. When they say you have to wring it, okay? So for example, let's say there's a whole towel that you have to wash. Somebody vomited, you had cleaned up all the vomit. This towel is dirty now, what do you do, okay? So in this case, yeah, you put it under water in a sink, let's say, fold it, wring it once. Now here's where people get it wrong. Yes, the fiqh says you have to wring it with all your strength. It doesn't mean you do an Olympic style, and you'll see your hands after. Poor, whoever your washing person is. In the old countries, you have, what do they call them, dobi? You have a person who washes the clothes. Do you think that they're wringing like Olympic level strength every time, 3 times for each garment? No, it's impossible. So you put it under a tap that's flowing water, and you just squeeze it under there. That is, in flowing water, it's enough to do it. Submerge it. Or if you put it in a bucket, for example, and the water is coming in from a tap, and you just tip it like this, and then you wring it, it's enough. Or you can skip all of that and do what? Throw it in the washing machine. Okay? This is where I'm sorry to say, but scholars who are not necessarily familiar with the washing machine, or they were suspicious of the washing machine. Like, what is this Western thing that's washing machine, So actually this happens where I've seen this, where people are like, no, washing machine doesn't do it. You have to wash by hand and then put it. Oh my gosh. I mean, try having a whole household of people. The lady will be sitting there forever, and I'm not saying the lady should do it, but that's often in our cultures what happens. Or, so in other words, throw it in the washing machine, because the washing machine has a cycle, okay? And it does simulate the wringing because it spins around and it dries it like that. So matter is solved. Okay, any questions? Yes.
So, to read like, for example, like like something came on your pants or larger than your size. It doesn't break your wudu because it's not from within. It's
Yes. Good. Yes.
so all you basically just have to do is change your pants or clean it if you can't lay it and you're good to go.
Exactly. So when the beer can exploded on me, all I had to do was change my clothing and wash the one area that was affected, and I could go back to prayer. I didn't have to make my wudu again. Although sometimes a person just feels like they want to make wudu again, and this is fine, right? We're talking about the minimum. Doesn't mean you can't do more, but you can't become obsessive. What happens if there's an item that you cannot squeeze? Like, for example, your carpet at home. Okay, your baby was crawling on the carpet, urinated on the carpet, diaper leaked on the carpet. Yeah, you're smiling because you know this is how it happens. Everybody this happens to. First question I have to ask is this. When people learn this fiqh, and especially some of the fiqh teachers, unfortunately, they begin to teach fiqh as though you need to go around purifying the whole world. It's not your task. You don't have to go around purifying everything. How do you purify the wall? How do you purify this, to this, to this? It's good to purify things, but when you get obsessed with it, this is how you cause OCD in yourself and other people. Okay? So if you have a toddler, okay, the area that they pee in, they pee on the couch or something, okay, what do? You pour water on that area a little bit. So what I do is if it's like a smelly thing, like I mix soapy water, the first one, I make soapy water. And then I pour over. Then you take a towel and you just soak up the towel. So it's instead of like wringing, you're just soaking up the water. Then you pour water again, soak it up, pour water again, soak it up, done, finish. Don't start thinking more about this, right? What do you do if somebody urinates on tiles? Okay? On the tiles. What do? Well, first take dry paper towels. First soak up the dry thing, so then it doesn't spread everywhere else. Soak up the urine or vomit or whatever. And then what do? Then you take some water and you just go like that, like that, like that, finished and done. Technically, there are even easier ways of doing it. What if you say, wait, I don't know where the urine went. The kid was running and peeing at the same time. Now, I've done this before, and I make a little trail of paper napkins, and I find out where the wetness is and everything. Because when you become obsessed with fiqh, you start doing some funny things, okay? So this is where you can save yourself all of that. The reality is anything that is attached to the earth in a fixed way, once the trace goes away over time, it's considered pure. So even if you're like, I don't know where my kid, he leaked here, but then he had wet hands and wet feet and ran over the carpet. I don't know where it is. Now I can't pray on the carpet. No. First of all, once you cannot see the trace, you don't have to assume anything is there. So let me ask you this. You go to a banquet hall, and it's time for prayer. Okay, they're having a wedding in the banquet hall. They don't have anything, so they're like, just pray on the carpet. Can you just pray on the carpet? But what if the non-Muslims were drinking alcohol? They probably spilled alcohol on it. Can you still pray on that carpet? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Because as long as the trace isn't there, and you're not going to see a trace. Like generally speaking, right? You're not going to see a trace of something because those are liquids that are very difficult to discern. So you assume purity. This is another thing, a very important rule. And if there's one thing you take away from this is the default is always purity. Default of anything, okay? Somebody gives you clothing. Default is it's clean. Can I pray over here? Default is clean. You go to the park. You're praying on the grass. Wait, how do you know a dog didn't go over there? I don't. Maybe he did. Maybe many dogs have gone over there. Over time, many, many dogs. But do I see a trace of it? Am I smelling anything? And you don't have to get down and start going. You don't have to do that. You say, it's clean, it's clean. Khalas. Can you pray in your shoes? You don't have to, again, somebody did this, they start taking their shoe and they start really looking close. You don't need to do that. You look like this? No, it's fine. It's fine. Praying in my shoes. Finish. So the Sharia has a type of ease, right, in it. Okay. Yes. Yeah, so firstly, this is something important to know. Do you have to soak the mattress? Technically speaking, you're not praying on the mattress unless you standing up on it, or I don't know. But this is what we get into as Muslims. We start to purify everything in the world because, it's good to purify it, but how would you clean it just as a normal person? Yeah, exactly. Or like but even, yeah, spray something or whatever. I mean, you can do that. That's not an Islamic purification. But if for an Islamic purification, what I would do is, because sometimes it happens, people are sick and they pray in their bed, like whatever, or you just read Quran there, then mix soap and water and just pour a light layer of it. Don't put so much that it's dripping through the other side of the mattress and then it's getting everything dirty. No, because remember, washing in Islam constitutes a flowing of water. So merely wiping, this is why I was telling someone else, when someone does istinja, we're going to get to this point. Actually, we're going to get to istinja in a second. And should you use wet wipes during istinja? That's the debate, okay? Because it is a bit of a controversy, apparently. So, now, yes, go on. Oh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, it breaks wudu, it doesn't break ghusl. There's a difference. So it breaks the wudu. That arousal liquid breaks wudu once it comes out, and you know for sure. But it does not break ghusl until there's climax, and then. Okay? No, because it's still impure. So pre and post is still equally impure. It's just one of them breaks the wudu, one of them breaks the ghusl. Okay? It's because of the climax that is accompanied with it. Okay? Okay. Next, we have to stop for Maghrib. I think we're almost at time. Yes, go on.
Oh, I was just going to ask about dog saliva. Does that count as impure?
So we talked about that right in the beginning. Dog saliva is impure according to the Hanafi school. In the Maliki school, dog saliva is pure. So the Hanafi school, it's you would have to. It's heavy. Yeah, I mean anything with a dog and a pig would be heavy, right? But there is dispensation in the Maliki school for those people who are always around dogs and they can't escape it. So just something on the side. Okay, so cats are perfectly fine in that sense, but there is a little bit of a detail with cats in terms of if they drink in your water, but because nobody shares water with cats anymore, we're not going to deal with it. But there is a detail about cats because the Prophet gave a cat water to drink, but if it's like an outdoor cat, then it's makruh because then it goes and eats mice and stuff like that. You get what I'm saying? So you either have to know its mouth is clean or there's a bit of a nuance. So inshallah, guys, let's try to get together as soon as we finish Maghrib, just very quickly. Get something quickly, come back, but we won't do a long delay, okay? Because I was late. I'm sorry. Assalamu alaikum. And anybody who has a private question or anything, you can walk with me down or, So, thank you so much. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. Okay, Jazakallah khair.
What's going on? Busy? Chilling? Kicking it. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
مستقيم واعتدلوا تراصوا تناظروا. الله أكبر الله الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. إن الذين كفروا من أهل الكتاب والمشركين في نار جهنم خالدين فيها أولئك هم شر البرية. إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات أولئك هم خير البرية جزاؤهم عند ربهم جنات عدن تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها أبدا رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه ذلك لمن خشي ربه. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر السلام عليكم ورحمة الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله استغفر الله
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I want to thank everyone who's been coming out to our intensive, alhamdulillah, that's taking place upstairs on purification and prayer, the fiqh of purification and prayer. There are still people coming for the first time, alhamdulillah, today, so it's completely fine if you want to drop in. If you have not come before, you will learn some things about the laws of cleaning yourself, as well as an introduction to the laws of prayer. Please join us tonight and tomorrow from 7 p.m. to Isha. Inshallah, drop in. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum. Okay, we'll begin in just a few seconds. I'll take 1 or 2 sips of chai, and then we'll begin. Okay, Bismillah. In the interest of time, let's get going. So we talked about how much filth is excused. We talked about the inner palm, okay? And they derived this amount, it is said, because they said that if you're allowed to use just stones to wipe yourself in the backside, right, then it means that that area of filth is actually excused. So if you apply that to the rest of if you look at this area, it's about the size of the back passage and its surrounding area. So then they applied this to being anywhere else on the body or the clothes. However, if you have, for example, multiple areas of blood, and you add it together, and it makes more than this area, then you would have to wash it. Does that make sense? So, for example, somebody bleeds and multiple areas of blood. Again, you don't have to start taking out a ruler and start to measure it. Just quickly, you eyeball it, and I think this is more, then you wash it. If not, then it is actually excused. There is an example where, okay, we'll talk about that later. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, the light spray of urine is excused as long as the size of each dot is no bigger than the size of a needle pinhead. So in other words, this happens a lot to guys but also to girls. They're going to the bathroom, there's a lot of urgency to go, and there's a little spray that comes back, like an ocean spray, okay? You know what I'm talking about? Of course, everybody knows what I'm talking about, right? And then, you know, sometimes, for example, you can feel like a light spray back because the toilet is hitting back. Does that mean you have to wash your leg and wash your whole body? Actually, no, it's excused. What's another example? You know, I'm taking my son, we're at a park, or like a camping or something, or on the side of the street or whatever, not the street, but like, you know, in a wild area, and he has to go to the bathroom. Okay, what do? I stand behind him when he was a young kid, and I say, okay, just stand up and just go do it. No, it's okay, no one's looking. Don't worry, just do it. Okay. So then what happens? There's a little bit of a spray, and I can see on my shoe, there's like little flecks of urine. Actually, that's forgiven, even though it's right there. Because it's impossible to avoid. Especially in those times when you were urinating outside, it would happen where it would bounce off of the stones and the thing and come back on you. And that doesn't mean, again, it's excused, but it doesn't mean it's good. It just means, okay, if you can't clean it, no problem, right? This happens as well for a person who urinates in a urinal, for example, for the men, right? Which is not sunnah, but it's not haram either. Okay? So it's makruh. But if there's a need to do it, then it becomes permissible. Okay, for men, for example. We have this idea sometimes that it's like haram to stand up and urinate. It's makruh, but it's not a level of sinfulness. And if there's a need, there may be no excuse, and there will be no dislike at all. Any questions? Okay, next. There's following are examples. The following are examples where filth is not transferred from one place to another. So this is another place where people get lots of waswasa, the idea of filth transferring. Now, as I said before, you have to be really careful. There is something in the psychological world called germ phobia. And in germ phobia, you believe that contamination is passing from place to place just by like touching and going like this, like almost like a COVID type of, you know, fear. Like, you understand? There's germs everywhere. So people who have this psychiatric problem, when they learn about Islamic najasa, they combine it and then they get OCD. So this is why I'm trying to tell you that, for example, somebody said, oh, my toddler peed on the carpet and somebody didn't know and they walked over it barefoot. Now they walked all over the house. Now my entire house is najis. Never. Okay? Much less my cousin ate Doritos and somebody told me Doritos is haram. Therefore, there's some pieces on the couch. Therefore, it's spread all over the couch. Anytime you start thinking like this, the person has, it's not sound Islamic knowledge. Okay? Now, the moisture that appears on a dry, pure garment after being wrapped in a damp, impure garment, that it would not drip if it is squeezed is not deemed impure. What's an example? Your kid urinates, they pee themselves at school. And so the teacher, they remove the kid's pee garment and they wrap it in a towel, okay? And then you bring it home. Now, obviously, you're gonna put the garment in the washing machine. Now, you'll probably put the towel in the washing machine too, but technically speaking, you don't see any urine on the towel. There's a little bit there might be some dampness that's soaked through. But if it's not something you can squeeze out, it's actually, you don't deem that impure. Interesting, isn't it? You would still probably do it for hygiene purposes, but just to let you know, okay? What else? A clean, wet foot that steps on impure ground without a trace of filth appearing is not deemed impure. So this is an example, okay? Somebody makes wudu, and they didn't dry their feet, and they walk all over their carpet. But somebody just remembered, oh my gosh, in their bedroom, there was a drop of sexual fluid that fell somewhere over here, okay? Just because you walk barefoot on the carpet now doesn't mean your foot is impure, because you cannot perceive anything on your foot, okay? The body of a person who sleeps in a dry, impure garment, which becomes wet from their sweat, without any trace of filth appearing, there is not impurity. So what happens? There was an underwear that had impurity that was dry. Then you went to sleep. Now you woke up and you've been sweating. Does that mean you have to now wash your body? No, you do not. Okay, because you don't see the trace on your body. Okay. By the way, also, the body, the garment, or anywhere can be used when there's filth on it, najasa. You can clean it with any type of water, even water that has been used for washing something else, or it's used water, or any liquid. So you can use vinegar and wash a stain, najasa, and it counts, as long as it's a liquid. So you don't need to have pure water only. It could be even for example, let's say you're saving the water from your wudu. Some people really ecologically friendly. They save the water from their wudu and you give it to your plants. You can even use that for your laundry. It's not a problem, okay? As long as it's not impure. Now, complete chemical transformation called istihala is a means of purification of filth, such as feces turning into salt or ashes. So for example, something dies and you bury it in your yard. Like a little bird or your pet hamster dies, you bury it in the yard. You come back and that animal's not there anymore, it's just all soil now. Does that mean that is najis soil, impure soil? Because a dead body was there? No. Because there has been complete chemical transformation. In the same way, there was feces of a dog and it just disintegrated and it became something else. Or you burned najasa, okay? For example, something is cremated or burned. It's a chemical transformation, it's no longer the same thing. There's lots of examples of chemical transformation, actually. There's lots more examples. In fact, when wine becomes vinegar, the vinegar becomes pure. Did you know vinegar was wine before? It went grape juice to wine to vinegar. Yes, vinegar must become alcohol first. And then it's fermented even further and becomes vinegar. So this is why, even if there is, once there is that chemical transformation, a pig falls into a salt mine and becomes salt. You can eat that salt, and even if it was a pig, that's fine. In fact, there is a minority of scholars in the Hanafi madhab who actually believe that gelatin is now sufficiently chemically changed that they can eat gelatin. Okay? So I don't promote that you start eating haram marshmallows. okay? Because now we have good halal marshmallows in the market. But where this comes useful is if you need to have a pill, a capsule, and there's a gelatin capsule, and you have no other way. This is actually a position now that becomes easy for the Muslims, because in, you know, your elderly mother, you're telling her, no, mom, you can't have this, and she needs the medicine, and it's hardship, because everything is gel cap these days, right? Prenatal vitamins, oh man, gelatin and everything. So generally you avoid it out of taqwa, but there is a Hanafi position that says, no, it has changed enough, because the same pig in the gelatin form that's changed chemically, it's not the same thing. So this is the argument they make. Once chemically, it's not the same. Soap has animal ingredients in it. Women's cosmetics. Oh, do you have to start reading the label now and it's an animal ingredient? All those things, they go through a chemical process for the chemical properties in it. They're not using it for the animal. They're using it because there's a chemical property. Once it's changed into another substance, you can put it on and it's fine. Question? Oh, okay. This is where it gets complicated, okay? But this is the class on purification and prayer. If we get into food, we're going to be talking forever. But my personal approach is this. When I see cheese, I eat it, okay? If you tell me this is from pig, then that's a different story. If I find out somehow, that's a different story. Otherwise, I look at it, I assume it's fine, I eat it. The Sahaba were bought cheese from Persia before Persia became Muslim, and they ate it without asking. But yes, there is an issue with rennet. So what you don't know, what is the default assumption? It's allowed. It's pure. It's halal. That's default. Unless you know this thing it usually contains something haram, right? Then that's different. Then I say, wait, let's check. But cheese could be microbial rennet, could be from this, could be from that. We don't know. And then you don't delve too much into those things. Otherwise, you know, the pizza that comes in the masjid, what's the cheese from? And then we go to this extent where it's beyond our capacity that Allah has tasked us with. Does that make sense? So alhamdulillah. Okay, let's keep going. We should do a whole class on food though. We should do a fiqh of food. Next thing, a leather sock or any sock or a sandal or a shoe can be purified by rubbing the affected area with the ground. Okay? Washing is not necessary. So you walk, let's say you're walking with your shoes and you step on dog filth. Does that mean you have to go home now and pour water on it and do all this stuff? No. You just keep walking. What is the difference between rubbing the foot on grass and just walking? There's no difference. So when my teacher told me this, like I learned this ruling and I thought, okay, you have to go and start rubbing it. That's how for years I said, you have to go and rub it on dirt. And then he said, no, you just walk. I said, what do you mean walk? He said, well, when you walk, you're rubbing it on the ground anyways. I said, oh, what does that mean? As you're walking, your feet are purifying themselves, your shoes. You don't have to check. Because in the olden days, when everybody was riding a camel and a horse, and everybody had goats, filth was everywhere. And when it rained in the streets, it washed all of that dung and urine, and it's all over the street. It's filthy, technically speaking. But the Sahaba were not scared of that. The Sahaba were not worried. So this is why, subhanAllah, when things get hard and difficult, if everything's getting impure, the Sharia makes it easier actually. So even they used to say, oh, you know, if you get a little bit of the urine on you, of the horse and the cow, and then Imam Abu Yusuf, he saw that when the streets rain, all that dirty water, you know, when in India and Pakistan, when it floods and the things come up, how are you going to save yourself from that? So this is where you don't assume anything. It's from the drain. The drain is dirty. You don't assume anything. It's nasty. Hygienically, of course, you don't want to do it. But, you know, you walk into the masjid with your pants are a little bit wet and from the drain or something, you don't assume anything unless you see something. And you never will see anything. Okay? Good. A sword or the like can be purified by wiping its surface. Why? Because the Sahaba, when they used to go to war, they would cut people and there's bleeding. There's blood. But they didn't go and wash their sword. They used to pray with their sword on. So you know what they used to do? They have a cloth. They go like this. Whoosh, they wipe it. That's it. Pray. So if you can have that najasa on a sword and you're still praying with it, then what else does this ruling come under? What else? I'm going to try to make you brainstorm. What else? So you can just wipe it with a dry cloth, as long as no filth remains. So you wipe it in such a way that you cannot see any filth. What else is like this? Your phone, yeah, actually, technically. So here's the thing. Any smooth surface without cracks and pores, so wood is cracks and pores, for example, grout in a tile that's different, but a mirror, your fingernail, your toenail, smooth. Bone, glass, china, porcelain, a smooth tile, polished wood, silver, copper, your gold, right? Any smooth surface, even the toilet seat, okay? Plastic that's smooth. As long as you wipe it with a cloth, it's Sharia-wise pure. Now, whether you want to sit on a toilet seat that has pee on it because you wiped it, that's a different question. That's your choice. But technically speaking, if you wipe it, it's fine. Now, there's times where it might be acceptable, might not. Hygienically, that's different. For example, when you go to Subway, okay, and the guy cuts the sandwich in front of you and then goes to the next sandwich. I prefer to say, hey, wash your knife, wash the knife first, and then, or the pizza place, can you give a different cutter? Technically speaking, if he took a tissue and he just went and he wiped the thing clean and there's no trace of it, you can eat it. Even if they cut pork right in front of you, you just go like this. Now, here's the funny thing. You'll never hear these rulings, but it's right here from a 500-year-old book. Okay? You never hear these rulings. Why? Because generally speaking, the scholars call towards a taqwa level. The thing is, in a society where everyone is Islamic, it's easy to work with taqwa. Once you come to the West and it's a free-for-all, and you really find the difficulty of finding a place in which something was not cut with something else, or it becomes very difficult. Right? So this is why I'm teaching you the base ruling, and I'm not saying you come to the bare minimum, right? Okay, what else? The ground of the earth can be purified by drying it, as long as no trace of filth remains visible. So the dog pees on your lawn, once the sun beats down on it, day or two passes, you can't trace pee on the lawn anymore. You can pray on it, right? And this is for the sake of praying. However, you cannot make tayammum on that spot. So that's what they say. They say you can pray on it, but tayammum, you should make sure that it's a clean place. Okay? What else? A garment. Yes, go ahead.
How would you know then? So if you don't know, then it's fine.
Alhamdulillah, if you don't know, you assume it's fine. Okay? I remember I was with Sheikh Yasser Qadi once. We went to go eat in a restaurant, and outside there was some grass. So I said, let's pray, up in Toronto. And so I started leading the prayer. He was there. He goes, but wait, there's probably a dog that might have gone on this lawn. Let's find something. And I said, listen, Hanafi school, you just assume. It's fine. It's okay. So we just had a joke. So there's different people who will, But I guarantee you, if it's God's green earth, some animal has peed on it in one time or another, but we're not supposed to go into that, right? That doesn't mean, by the way, I still do put out like a janamaz or like a musalla. I still use it. But I know if I don't have one, I don't have to be worried. In fact, technically speaking, if you go to like for example, there are people who convert to Islam and their families oppose them so much they have to pray in secret. I've seen this multiple times. Especially, I knew some people, from my background, Hindu background, and this guy's dad would beat him if he caught him praying. So he had to pray in the bathroom. So now, generally speaking, are you supposed to pray in the bathroom? No. But is it valid to pray in the bathroom? Technically, yes. As long as you don't see filth on the ground, it's obviously there microscopically. It is there. But technically, you cannot conclude that it's not a valid prayer. Of course, no Muslim should want to do this. But there are cases, you're in jail, God forbid. And the toilet is right there and you have a cell. So these rulings are not just for nothing. There are times when this comes in handy. So we don't have to tell the convert, oh no, you prayed it, but then does this mean that I'm at work and I'm praying in the bathroom stall because I don't want, Steve and Cindy to know that I'm praying? Because I want to keep up with them, I want to impress them? No. Okay? Now, next. A garment or one's body with dried semen, shouldn't be sperm, that's not the correct term, it's semen. If that is on the body, because what happens is when it dries, it creates a film. Actually, according to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, it is sufficient to merely scrape it off. Now, these people are very surprised about this. What do you mean? Because it's still, so watch, and forgive me, but I have to demonstrate this. So let's say something falls here, right? Of male, for men only, okay? And then the person can take their, like this, and that's done. Or they can take a garment if they don't want to mess up their hand and just finished. Now, practically speaking, do people do it? No, you just wash it, okay? But the Prophet said, this is related, I believe, from Aisha radiallahu anha, that this was permissible to do because there's a body on it, and whatever the stain is left, forgiven, okay? And there are some schools of thought in which the male sexual fluid, I'm talking about semen, it was actually pure. They didn't even consider it najasa, actually. They considered it pure. Hanafi school, it is najasa. You should remove it. But if it dries with a body and then you scratch it off, even that's permissible. Yeah. But I suggest that you wash it, please. Yes, for hygienic purposes. Yes. Okay. And forgive me, we have to speak about this, right? Even in fornication, once there is penetration, ghusl is wajib on both sides. Okay? For example, so it's not just at the point of climax. It's just penetration occurs. Ghusl is wajib on both sides. But if climax occurs outside of penetration, only then ghusl is wajib on that person. Okay? So penetration or climax, then that makes ghusl wajib. Okay? And these are very good questions, important questions to ask, right? Okay. The hide or the skin of a dead animal is purified when you tan it. Okay? And there's details about this, but here's the point. There are some madhabs that can't wear a leather jacket because they say it's a dead animal's skin and we don't know was it slaughtered by the Sharia or not. We say, Hanafi school is very flexible, says leather, as long as it's not pig leather, cow leather, crocodile leather, I don't know, anything else leather. Once it is tanned and the moisture is gone and the flesh and the meat is gone, it is pure. So subhanAllah, I know somebody who had a leather interior of a car and they were following Shafi school. And oh my gosh, like they wrote in to the fatwa service, and subhanAllah, the person told them, go right to the car manufacturer, what kind of leather is this? Oh my gosh. Do you know the kind of OCD that people are causing? Now I can't stand beside someone, he's wearing a leather jacket, he's touching me at the same time. Come on guys, come on. Okay? But pig leather, yeah, that's different. Now, there is a way to tell if it's pig leather, apparently, because the quills of a pig, they leave certain holes inside the leather. But if you don't know, you just assume it's fine. Okay? But generally speaking, we cannot wear pig leather, and we should not use it. Yeah, please.
Why is the other skin, when they're tanning, or when they go through the process of tanning, they are considered to be pure, but not the pig? They also go through the same process, right?
Yes, but the pig is considered in Islam najis al-ain. Najis al-ain means the pig itself and everything to do with it is impure. So other animals, like for example, when you hunt an animal, for example, like you kill a bovine, a cow, they use the skin for leather. then they use the meat for food. They use the bones and they grind it up for something else. They use the tail and they make something else. So generally speaking, human beings, when they used every part of an animal, the only one Allah says, Najis al-Ain, is the pig. So we cannot benefit from it in any way. The only one exception now with this chemical change is with the gelatin question. But I still try to avoid that personally. But if somebody doesn't avoid it, I can't stop them. Yes?
Just a side comment.
Hmm?
I was watching a video not too long ago related to China. A lot of tasbih, a lot of stuff, religious stuff are being manufactured and being exported
Yes.
from China.
Yes.
And one of the factories they were showing, they were making a tasbih, and they were using the bone from the haram animal.
Yes. So we'll talk about why that's actually okay. We'll talk about it. Yes, we'll talk about it. As long as it's not a pig. But if it's like, we'll talk about it. Just question.
I wanted to ask if there's any other animal that is considered.
No, the pig is the only one that is najis in itself. In all, like it's just completely najis. No other animal takes the ruling quite like the pig. So you cannot. The only other skin that you cannot tan is human skin, but that's for a different reason. Okay. Okay. Any questions? Najasa questions? No. We move on. Okay. So where were we? Oh, after the skin has been purified, you can even pray on it. Or you can perform wudu from if you make a water sack. So for example, non-Muslims in China, let's say, they slaughtered a cow. They made leather from the cow's skin. It's pure. I can even make it into a water pouch, and I can make wudu from that water pouch. I can make it into a musalla, a prayer mat, and I can pray on that even though it was slaughtered in a haram way. Because once the skin is purified, it's something else now. It's tanned. Okay? And why? Because practically speaking, people use leather for things. Right? In the olden days, they didn't have all the different types of cloth we have. So was the Prophet ﷺ saying to people, this leather you're wearing, take it off, this leather, keep it? No. Right? Now, yes, okay. The other thing is this, it's a detail. I mean, when's the next time you're going to be skinning a lion? My dad has a leopard skin in Georgia, but we cannot bring it from 1969 or something from Kenya. And I can't bring it over from my uncle's house because it's illegal now to carry, skin. So when I get it and I pray on it, I'll tell you guys. Just kidding, inshallah. So, okay, anything like a body part that does not have flowing blood is not rendered impure upon death, such as the following. Hair. The hair of the animal is not impure when the animal dies. The meat can be impure, but the hair is not impure because does hair have life in it? No. So dog hair, even dog hair actually technically in some madhabs, okay? Our madhab, dog hair is not impure. In our madhab, cat hair, not impure, okay? Human hair, not impure. Cut feathers, okay? Cut feathers. So for example, you cut the feathers off of like some type of like a peacock or something like that. It is not impure. Now they say as opposed to the plucked ones, the ends of which are impure, what they mean is like there's a dead bird, you pluck the thing off and it's wet on the other side. It's a dead bird, so the meat is haram. So that's the exception. But when's the last time you guys plucked a feather off of a dead bird? Okay, so you see feather, assume it's fine. Okay, and if not, you just wash the end of it. A horn. So it's the horn of a rhinoceros, for example, the horn of some animal. Even if it was slaughtered haram, the horn does not have life. Your nail clippings, a claw, nail clippings is fine. Bone, now this is a question. Bone as long as there's no fat. So when you take a bone, if you dry it and then you take off all of the fat from the bone, and now it's just a dry bone, this is actually not impermissible. Okay, so you can go to the pet store and you can buy a dry bone and you can give it to your, your hunting dog, and you can buy it and give it to your hunting dog. Okay, for example. What's that? Yeah, technically speaking, you could even cook with it. But I don't know if as a Muslim you would want to do it. Because bones do not enter into the halal haram question. It's the meat that's halal haram, not the bone. Technically speaking, you can. Okay? In the Hanafi school, bones are pure. Okay? So that's why there's an argument even about bovine gelatin that's not halal. Technically speaking, gelatin is from what? The bone. It's the bone that they scrape, and so there's debates about it. In other words, there's a lot of things where there's such a difference of opinion that it's hard to just, you know what I mean? This is just to widen your mind, expand your mind, right? No, bone broth is different though. No, not bone broth. Because bone broth is not just pure bone. It's the fat in it that makes it thing. So technically speaking, you still have to go and say, is this broth from haram, like from chicken or beef or anything? And, then you would not be able to eat it. Now, then the other thing is like a deer's pouch or something. Okay, we're not going to talk about the type of saliva. Generally speaking, by the way, the saliva of a kafir is pure. So let's say like your neighbor comes and drinks from something, and then can you drink from it? Technically, yes. What if you saw them drinking alcohol, and then they drink from a cup? This is probably not going to happen in most of your life. But this may happen to a convert, right? Their family still drinks alcohol, and everyone just, hey, try some eggnog. Oh, okay, somebody tries it. Now you try it. Now, Imam Abu Hanifa says, if the kafir or anybody who drinks alcohol, once they swallow 3 times, cleans their mouth, and then you assume their mouth is pure. Okay? So I'm not saying to go start sharing the cups with everybody. Kafir is juta. I'm not saying that to go start drinking everybody. But I'm just saying, in general, there is ease in this. Because sometimes people shun the non-Muslim as though they are like dirty and impure. And when you treat people like that, it becomes like a caste system. You're untouchable, you're unclean, you're non-Muslim. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I'm sorry? No, that's a chemical alcohol. That's not the drinking alcohol, right? Yes, from the back.
What about like beard brushes? Usually they have like
Pig hair. Yes. So this is very interesting that they do make an exception in some opinions about boar bristles. Because, this is interesting, because even though that's supposed to be haram and najis, but there were some, like you could say, cultures where it was like that's the only thing they had to brush their hair, so they allowed that to pass. And one thing you'll notice very interesting is Sharia now seems inflexible because the level of the scholars to analyze things in the real world has gone down. So we're just stuck with the old texts and we don't apply it. But when you go back to Imam Abu Hanifa's time, he was thinking and he was reformulating and he was like, do you know what I'm saying? He was like engaging with on the ground question, is this in culture? Is this impossible to avoid? Is this something that is, you know what I mean? So there are many examples of that where you can't always conclusively say, right? So there may be an exception. So always ask. Okay, next. Okay, istinja. After urination, a man must ensure that no drops of urine remain in the urethra. That's called istibra. Until no traces of wetness appear on the tip of the organ, because doing so prevents wudu. What does this mean? Now, people, they go to extremes in this. So what it means is, and the reason is because I assume with women, you don't have the dripping problem. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but men generally, they can get this problem. Sometimes, after you urinate, it's very simple. You take a tissue and you just dab the end of your body part, wait until there's no drop coming out, and then get up and go. Now, the problem is sometimes, yes, if later on one drop comes out, when you're walking around and you cough or something, or you sneeze, or you the minute you put your leg up in the sink, that's when the drop decides to come out, okay? Okay. Because that's the way our pipes are made, right? That with movement, something comes out. Now, the problem is, technically, that drop, as long as if it's for sure comes out, it will break your wudu. But we also make this other extreme, where the men stay inside the bathroom for 10, 15 minutes, walking around. And this, in some cultures, this was recommended, but Others say you don't have to do this, right? You just stay until the main drops stop. And then the best thing you should do, the trick, wash just the tip. You don't need to wash the entire area. Wash the opening. And actually don't dry it. And then you walk around, because remember the sunnah we said after is to sprinkle something in the underwear. Why? So afterwards when a drop comes out, you just say, that was the drop of water, that's not urine. So you walk around and you give yourself the ignorance to ignore it. Does that make sense? So that you're not always, because there's some guys going back and forth, checking. And in fact, there was one brother who was so obsessed at some point with every drop coming out that he hurt himself. Like you can damage your body by squeezing and by pulling, and there's no reason to do any of that. Even the idea that do you have to put a cloth there or a tissue? You can if you want to, but it's not required. Okay? Another person was told to squeeze on the back of the perineum, and if you do that, then massage it, and he hurt himself and he bled actually. Yeah, and he got this answer from a website, Islamic website. Press here and do this and do that. And then he got bleeding and went to the doctor. The doctor said, do you have children already or you don't have children already? Because you can hurt yourself. So Islam is not about going to extremes. And sometimes, unfortunately, online answers, Q&A, they can go to some extremes. So please ask people who are, who are mainstream for these answers, okay? Next, we talked about this, that if the filth of the body does not move beyond the exit hole, it is sunnah to clean up by using a stone or the like, such as a tissue. One should wipe forwards and backwards until the area is clean. It is ideal to wash afterwards. Do you notice what it said? It is ideal to wash afterwards. They didn't say fard, okay? However, until one feels convinced that the filth is removed. But you shouldn't have misgivings. So, sometimes people take 3 whole jugs to wash themselves. This is excessive. Wipe until the tissue is clean, generally speaking. Use water once, dry up, and go. Okay, don't keep obsessing. Yeah. It's excused, but it's still better to wash, right? So if it's less than this area, technically, even if you just got up and went. So for example, a guy goes to pee in a urinal, and then he just shakes it off, and then just goes. Technically, he can make wudu and go pray. But it's better not to do that. Okay? Now, with girls, there's this challenge, because I have daughters, I understand this. With girls, the challenge is it can go this way, then this way, then this way, then this way. So generally speaking, women generally have to be a little bit more careful when they use the bathroom for number one, because if it goes everywhere, then you should wash it, right? Of course, if one is not able to, they don't have the means to do it, obviously there is, one can be excused if it's excessive, right? But generally speaking, we should try. Now, here's another question. Should you use wet wipes? There's a debate. One of my fiqh teachers said you should not use wet wipes because you're not technically washing the area, but you're just spreading the same najasa all over the body. And it's the smell of the wet wipe makes you feel that it's clean, but you're not actually cleaning it. And the proof is this. Use a non-scented wipe to wipe your baby's bum, and then when it dries, the whole area smells. Why? Because you just pasted it all over. So actually, the better thing to do is to use something dry. Now, if you want to use the wet wipe, because that's what you like to do, you can still do it, but there's a difference of opinion. But you don't have to use a wet wipe. The other trick to do is to take, now this is not fiqh, this is trick. Use a lot of toilet paper and you bunch it up and then you wet it. You've seen Muslims doing this? You wet it and you take a dripping water, you quickly go in the bathroom, you put it on top of the thing, and then you wring it. And then that's like you're washing, and then you wash yourself like that. It's kind of a cheat, right? SubhanAllah, it's now become a sign of Islam. Like if you walk into a bathroom and you see a bottle like this, like you can see a Muslim has been here. Alhamdulillah. Yeah, you can. In fact, they left it there for you to use, right? So, but the etiquette is what? You fill it back up and you put it. Alhamdulillah. So, however, it is not permissible to expose one's nakedness to perform istinja. Okay? So if you're not able to perform istinja and it's time to pray, you cannot expose your nakedness to other people to perform istinja, of course. Okay. Now, let's skip down a little bit. It is disliked to clean oneself with a bone or dried dung or food or anything of value like silk or cotton. It is disliked to use one's right hand when cleaning oneself. Why? Because you eat with your right hand. So Islam had a basic level of hygiene. You eat with your right, you shake with your right, and with your left, you clean yourself, right? So back then, before people had soap, before people had even access to water, okay? We won't go through the other details. Now, after the servant purifies his garment, body, and prayer area, and commences the prayer, accompanied with a truly beneficial purification of the heart from the likes of rancor and hatred, from everything besides Allah, and intends to carry out the divine command, bearing in mind the greatness of Allah's majesty and His honor, with full hope that He will accept that which He has enjoined upon him of worship, then it is hoped for the servant will be granted eternal joy due to the divine acceptance of his devotion. Look how they end this. Why? Because our purification is not robotic. It's not about microscopic hygiene. Everything I just said right now, you are in a spiritual communion with the divine. And so the way that he approaches the section 2 on prayer is by thinking about Allah. Now that you've purified yourself and you're ready, you have wudu and everything, now you enter into the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to worship Him. Are we ready to begin prayer? Okay. Here's the question. We cannot go over all of we have about half an hour right now. And then tomorrow we have 1 hour and 1 hour. Okay, and I'll try to be perfectly on time, inshallah. So we have 2.5 hours. I will not be able to cover every single section on prayer. So what I'll do is the main aspects of prayer. If there's other questions that people have, they can talk to me, okay? And maybe another day, like next summer, for example, inshallah, if Allah gives us life and health and strength and inshallah everything, maybe we can do a revisit prayer, okay? Because it's very, very deep. Okay, one thing, it starts with the 5 prayer times. We know the 5 prayer times. They're written over there, over there, with the prayer timings. Do we know how to tell time by the sun, the prayer times? Okay, very simple. In the dark of night, when you start seeing the first little bit of light on the horizon, Fajr starts. When you see the first little light on the horizon, it's almost impossible to see, but you can see it. Fajr starts. As the sun starts coming up, the place starts getting lighter and lighter and lighter. That's still Fajr. You can still pray Fajr until that time, okay? For men, it's actually better to wait a little bit until the place becomes lighter so that more people can go to the masjid in the light. Because remember, in the olden days, you didn't have lights. Now, when the sun comes fully up, Fajr ends. Once sunrise happens, meaning the sun comes up, not fully up. Once you see the sun, Fajr ends. If you are praying Fajr at that moment, your Fajr gets cut off and you have to repeat it after. In the Hanafi school. So if Fajr ends, it doesn't say here. Let's say Fajr ends at like 6 something or 5 something. And then you have to pray and get your Fajr in before sunrise happens. Because if you start it and sunrise comes, it cuts off your prayer. And you have to wait for 10 minutes. So you're not allowed to pray from sunrise for about 10 minutes after. Why? Because traditionally, people who worship the sun used to pray when the sun was coming up. So Islam said, we do differently. When they are praying, we don't pray. Okay? So you wait until the sun now 10, 15, 12 minutes, 12, 15 minutes, and the sun comes up. Now you can make up Fajr. Now you can pray Sat al-Ishraq, Duha, Chasht, whatever you call it. You can pray it when the sun comes up, about 12 to 15 minutes after. Okay? Yeah, in the Hanafi school, cuts your prayer. But in all the other schools, it's still valid. So in the Shafi'i school, even if you say Allahu Akbar right before sunrise, you can keep praying. In the Hanafi school, no. The sun comes up, you're not supposed to pray when the sun is rising. So there's difference of opinion. If you did it, don't worry about it. If you did it, don't worry. But you know there's a Hanafi and a Shafi'i opinion, right? Yes. Yes. No, Fajr you definitely make up. Yeah, thank God we can make it up. in fact, the Prophet ﷺ himself, Allah made him sleep through Fajr with the entire army to teach us how to make up a prayer. If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't know. SubhanAllah, so merciful. Sometimes I think, may Allah forgive us, that the Prophet ﷺ would never miss a prayer. But Allah made him miss a prayer to show us, and in his case, it was wajib to miss the prayer to teach us how to make it up. Because maybe there were some people in the ummah, I think it's mercy. Some people would feel so bad that they missed a prayer, they wouldn't forgive themselves. So even our Rasul ﷺ in war, he had to miss 4 or 5 prayers in a row. He made them up all in a row with the Sahaba with him. And Fajr, they all made it up as well, right? So alhamdulillah. By the way, we'll talk about this. Every prayer you have missed in your life, you must make it up. Even if you started praying when you were 55. Qaza. Allah, yeah. Even if you started praying when you're 55 and you have 40 years of prayers to make up, you work on them. Okay? If gradually, make them up bit by bit by bit by bit. But the 4 schools are unanimous on this. There was an opinion of one scholar, like I think Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullahi believes that you don't have to do it. Okay? But the vast majority of scholars said you have to make it up. And people have done it. People have made up decades of prayer. How? When you pray one prayer, you make the make-up prayer of that. So you pray Fajr twice. One current, one past. If you do this for a number of years, you'll automatically do the qada. Now, if you don't have enough time in your life, Allah sees you tried. And Allah will see that you're trying your best, and inshallah Allah will forgive, we hope. But you have to try to make a plan. Now, don't think it's a burden on you. All you do is, I'm praying the last Fajr I prayed, I have to make up. You don't have to remember November 1st, you don't have to do that. Just say, I'm praying the last Fajr, last Fajr, from when you become baligh. So, for example, this counts for the prayers that you missed and the prayers that you invalidated as well. So, for example, this is kind of a detail, but the prayers and fasts. So, some a lady wrote to me, back in high school, okay, she used to break her fasts in high school. She'd start fasting, then she broke her fast. I said, you have to make up all those fasts after your period that you broke. You have to make them all up, for example. So. And then there's no, you cannot shortcut it. You may have to do kafara separate for the fasts, but you cannot say, I'll just pay and I won't fast. You can't do that. Until you get to the age where you physically cannot fast anymore, then you can do kafara. Not kafara, sorry. Fidya. Yeah. Okay? Lots of questions on this. We're not going to... Yes? Fidya, no. The prayer, you can never do a fidya for it. But we'll talk about this. Yeah. Not fast. Is it a prayer question? No, I don't want to do a fasting question right now. Sorry. Yes, Ibrahim? No, it doesn't. Only Fajr. Yes.
So for the OCD perspective of if you, for example, missed a few prayers and you don't know, does the sunnah prayer and the nawafil prayer cover the fard that you missed?
So technically the point of the sunnah prayer is to make up for the imperfections in the fard. But a sunnah will never equal the fard. It's the sunnah makes up for the distractions we have in our fard prayer, for the lack of perfection of our fard. Because we can never worship Allah the way He deserves to be worshipped. So one of the benefits of praying sunnah is that you get reward, but it's kind of fills in the gaps, but it doesn't take over for it. You have to leave that to the mercy of Allah.
So if you missed, let's say a year of prayer, then
You have to pray it back.
but if you don't know, then
Yeah. So for example, when I was 12, let's say, and I was baligh, I don't even know how many prayers I did and how many prayers I missed, right? You should record them, but if you don't remember, then you just try to do as many as you can think, and then you leave the rest to Allah. And believe me, Allah's mercy is greater. But you have to make the effort. You have to be honest with yourself, but don't freak out, right? Anybody who wants to develop that strategy to make up their past prayers, talk to me about it. Yes. Yeah, you can pray 5 days worth of prayers or 10 if you want to, all in one shot. So I know some people who say, I'm going to pray 3 days of prayers in one shot. Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, and they just keep doing that over and over, and they spend 1 hour a day making up their prayers. You just niyat, meaning you know what you're doing. I'm praying the last fajr. I'm praying the last dhuhr. I'm praying the last asr, for example. As long as you know, I'm making up. Making a fajr, making a fajr, making a fajr. And then you can make up all the fajrs you missed. And alhamdulillah, people do it and they feel such a burden lifted off their shoulders. In fact, brothers and sisters, do not see qadas as a burden. See it as a mercy. If someone told you had a chance to make $1 million every day and you missed that chance, and then someone says, okay, I'll give you a chance to make it up, would you find it a burden? Never. So people find that their past prayers are a burden. It's not. Allah is saying, I'll give you the reward again, inshallah. Right? So, subhanAllah, but that doesn't mean we purposely miss. But it means from the old days when we weren't practicing, we were ignorant, before we got in touch. Now, someone does not have to make up the prayers before they became Muslim. If it was before you became Muslim, no, it's forgiven. Even if you become Muslim at 90 years old, all those, it's fine. Yeah. Oh, this is OCD material now. This is OCD. If you consistently neglect your prayer, you're a kafir. Please be careful the opinions that you hear on TikTok and Instagram. Okay? Yeah. If you miss the prayer out of laziness, or you just weren't religious, you're not a kafir if you missed the prayer. There is an opinion out there in one school of thought that anybody who leaves the prayer should be, executed or something. Yeah. But we don't say that. We say a person who rejects the prayer, like there's no such thing as prayer, I don't have to pray anymore, that is kufr. But don't get this OCD like, oh no, I think I rejected my prayer, yeah. Yes, in the Hanafi school, yes. So as we will speak about, witr in the Hanafi school is wajib. So it's not fard. So that means you're not a kafir if you reject it. Okay? But it is wajib. So you should make up witr prayers. However, if it was before, but are you a Hanafi your whole life? Yeah. So that's the thing. If you're not a Hanafi, even the students of Imam Abu Hanifa considered witr sunnah, not wajib. So if you're a staunch follower of Imam Abu Hanifa, you make up your witr. If you were not, or you don't even know it's wajib, if you on another school of thought, it's forgiven. It's just sunnah. But like, for example, like when I first became Muslim, I prayed my 5 prayers, and I didn't know about witr, so I asked my shaykh, who's a Shafi, and I said, do I have to make up the witr prayer too? He said, you didn't know, it's fine. But that's because, it's a difference of opinion, right? But if you miss it, like one night you go to sleep, you missed Isha, do Isha and witr in your qada. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah, how much freedom is there to choose between different schools of thought? Sometimes there's 2 things. The scholars generally disapproved of people shopping and having a shopping cart Islam. So I pick the easiest things out of every single school and I make this like really Islam light. This is actually considered impermissible by scholars because you're making deen into a plaything. But there's 2 areas where you can take something from another school. Number 1 is if you have a need. So for example, in the Hanafi school, when you're traveling, you cannot combine your prayers. You have to pray each prayer in its time in the Hanafi school. You shorten it, but you cannot combine it. But in the other schools of thought, you can combine Dhuhr and Asr. You can combine Maghrib and Isha. And I used to be very strict. I can't combine. And then once I was in a taxi all the way from Dhuhr until Maghrib. And the guy would not stop in London. He would not stop. I missed my Asr prayer. I went back to my teacher. I said, I missed Asr. And he said, why didn't you combine Dhuhr and Asr? I said, I'm Hanafi. He said, no, you take the position of Imam Shafi. You combine. And later, if you find time, you pray Asr again. So this is an example of a need where I took a position from another school. I was at a restaurant and somebody served me lobster. I had never eaten lobster, but this is what's on the plate. Now, am I going to say I can't eat at your house? They're a Shafi person, or they're not a person of a madhab. So I take the position because there's a need for it, not because I'm just fooling around. Okay. The other thing is if you're actually convinced, like, you know what, I am like, this is not more for like student of knowledge scholar. And they're like, listen, I'm actually convinced this is the right position. Then that's between you and Allah, right?
That's what I meant, is that if you try to follow the logic in school, and rationality behind it,
Yeah.
then you know what?
Yeah, but usually people find the one they want to follow very convincing. Generally speaking, that's how we are. Because every school of thought has its proof that if you talk to this imam, oh, you're convinced. Then if you talk to this imam, you're convinced. You get what I'm saying? So people usually follow the one that they want to follow anyway, but at least you're following it out of a sense of conviction rather than just saying, what's the easiest thing I can do, right? Yes. Okay, so that means you can steal from people and then I'll make tawbah and then you don't have to pay them back? No, but this is the whole point. Listen. You, anything I'm saying, you can bring the saying of another teacher and say, I heard this, but I'll just say, but that's not what this teaches. So that might be a different teaching, but it's not the majority opinion. And the reason why is because the Prophet ﷺ himself made up the prayers that he missed, and so I don't think I don't feel this is a very strong opinion, because it actually encourages people to skip their prayer and then say you don't have to do anything about it. You get what I'm saying? I understand what you mean. Like, I just have to, because of time, it's just simply not the majority position. So you can always say, but he said, but I'll say, but that's not what we're teaching here. You see what I'm saying? You have a choice if you want to follow it. Yes, yeah. This is a good question. What happens if you miss a prayer, and then can you pray the next prayer on time if you haven't made up the first prayer that came before? If you have less than six or less prayers to make up in your account, you must make up your prayers before you pray the current prayer. So let's say I miss Fajr and I only have one prayer in my account of Qada. Then before I pray Dhuhr, I have to pray Fajr first. Okay? Let's say I have 4 prayers in my makeups. Before I pray the current prayer, I must make up 4. Let's say I have more than 6. So I have like months of prayer. I don't have to pray Fajr before the current prayer, but you should, so you don't have to. Because otherwise, then people who have to pray years of prayers, they'll never pray the current prayer. Yeah. Yes, we got to move on now. Yeah. Yeah. No, you pray everything first, then you pray Isha. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's not the Hanafi way. You have to pray them all back, and you should pray in order too. Yeah, because that's how you missed it, right? But if you didn't know, then automatically it's an ignorance. It's okay. You make up the prayers and then you pray Fajr. Yeah. Qada you can pray at any time, except the sunrise. Okay, guys, let's get to this. Okay, so then Dhuhr time, we know from the zenith of the sun until the sun's shadow is 2 lengths. So this bottle, if the shadow is coming down and the shadow length is equal to the length of the object, that is when the earlier Asr time starts, Shafi Asr. The Hanafi Asr starts when the shadow is double the length. Okay, that's just something that you may keep in your mind. Then as soon as the sun sets completely, Maghrib has begun. So as long as you can see the sun, it's still Asr time. Once the sun goes down completely, you can't see it, Maghrib has started. So you're on the beach, the sun goes down completely, Maghrib has begun, pray on the beach, even if you don't have the time. Okay? Once the red and purple light goes out completely and the dark comes in properly dark, that's time to pray Isha. Very simple. And you can pray Isha all the way up to Fajr. It does not stop at half the night. So if Fajr begins at 5 a.m., you can pray Isha at 4:55, but you shouldn't do that. It's makruh to leave it till half the night. But if you have to, like let's say, for example, I went to sleep after Maghrib, and then I woke up midnight, or let's say 3 o'clock in the morning, pray your Isha at that time. Okay, and it's still current prayer. Now, okay, let's go into the conditions of prayer. How long do we have? 15 minutes, okay? Here are the conditions of prayer. And you cannot begin the conditions of prayer until you have these conditions all there. The first one being, I've skipped, by the way, I've skipped a lot of things about prayer timings for now, because I just want to get to the mechanics of prayer. Number one, you have to be in a state of ritual purity from both minor and major ritual impurity. So you have to have wudu, ghusl, and wudu, okay? The second thing, you have to be free from physical filth that is beyond the excused amount. We know this, we've studied this, purification. Number three, you have to cover one's nakedness before you start praying, which for a man is the area right below the navel until right below the kneecap. So in other words, for a man, so we know that the nakedness of a man is navel to knee. The difference of opinion in the schools of thought is, can you show the navel and can you show the knee? According to Imam Abu Hanifa, you can just show the navel, but anything below is nakedness. But you have to cover the entire knee in the Hanafi school. So if your kneecap is showing, you're showing your nakedness. Okay, you go swimming at, what is it called, Great Wolf Lodge or whatever, and your shorts are showing your knee, nakedness. You're playing soccer and you're running around, your shorts are up to here, nakedness. And you're praying with all the brothers, and then you're pretend this is a thing, and it's going like this, nakedness. Okay? Yeah. Now the Shafi'i school says you can show the kneecap, but you can't show the belly button. So it's like, so do you understand what's going on here? There's a difference of opinion. When the Prophet said navel to knee, did he mean starting at the navel, then the knee? There's a difference of opinion. What does it mean? Go easy on other people, okay? But does that mean you can show the knee and all the way up to the middle of the thigh? No, come on guys, right? But if you want to say Hanafi school, you should be covering your knees, right? And what else did we have to say? And same thing for shorts. People go swimming and they're like, their shorts are down here, their whole belly is sticking out. Not a navel, more, it's, come on. So we have to be a little bit more modest, right? Just a little bit more modest. When it comes to, now, does that mean that you should just walk around topless and pray topless? It's makruh to pray without covering your shoulders. So you don't just do that. But sometimes, hey, you're in a rush. A man is making ghusl. Like he's in janaba. It's like Fajr's about to end. He comes out of the shower, puts a towel and just prays like that topless. You can do it. But it's not the best. Okay? You're on the beach, prayer time coming. Oh my gosh, what are you going to do? You get out of the water, you wrap a towel, navel to knee, and you pray. Okay, it's valid. Now, for women, however, the only thing that can show is the hands. So that means the wrist, the hands, and the feet, meaning the ankle down, and the face. Okay, during prayer, anything other than that should be covered. Okay, what this also means, and we'll talk about this in prayer as well. So you should cover all the hair during prayer, especially, but it's also part of the hijab, right? Any questions about that? Yes. Yeah, this is naked. We're talking about nakedness here. So whenever you're in front of someone who cannot see you naked, then you have to cover those areas. So in other words, just in front of your spouse that you can not wear just like that. But even at home, does that mean that at home, you can dress in like short shorts in front of your brother or sister? No, you can't. But I'm at home. I'm in my boxers. Too bad, buddy. It's nakedness, right? Yeah. Yeah. Now tightness as well gets to a debated question, because if it's completely tight such that it prints out the body completely, okay, then this is haram and it's not valid to pray like this. And but if it's not that, the dislikedness is according to how tight you're getting. Okay, so for example, yes, can a woman wear like spandex and go pray, technically covering everything but printing out the whole body? That's not permissible, right? But a looser trouser, looser top, yes. Does that make sense? And for men, it's the same thing actually. So tightness depends on also your culture, what you can do, manage, right? In some cultures, they're like, oh my gosh, she's wearing pants, and they're going crazy. Like, you can't even wear it like that. But in other cultures, it's completely normal to wear pants. So what you do is you just make sure that it's not, very tight, that, if you're praying or something like that, it still looks modest, and that's fine, right? Okay, let's keep going. So you covering one's nakedness is something that is a condition. Next thing, facing the Qibla. Okay, if you're in Mecca, you should face the Kaaba. If you're not in Mecca, you should face the direction of the Kaaba, which means what? This may not be exactly the Kaaba. I don't know, you can check if this is 23 degrees. But you generally have a 45-degree leeway. So let's say this is where the Kaaba is. Let's say this is where the Kaaba is. You have 45-degree leeway, like this, like a 90-degree. I can face this, like this, and pray. I can even face like this. Meaning if you're off a little bit, it's fine. If you're off a little bit, it's fine. And if you made a mistake, you tried and you made a mistake and you didn't know. Once I walked into a masjid and I started praying this way, completely against the Kaaba. Because I didn't see where it was such a big masjid, I couldn't see where the front and the back was. And somebody came and turned me around in the middle of my prayer. But and that's fine to do too. You can turn the person around. But if I prayed in the wrong direction, thinking that's where the thing was, and I tried to determine it, then it's forgiven, it's fine. Even if I was wrong afterwards, yeah.
What about in the time of traveling, or cannot face, or you just don't have access to?
Yeah, like for example, you're on a plane. So example, you're praying on a plane, there's no way that you can face the right way, then you face whatever the way you can. Okay? But this does not count. If you're parked in a parking lot and you're too scared to pray outside, like you just don't want to pray outside because you're embarrassed, and so you face the car and that doesn't count for that. Sometimes on a plane, a train, where you absolutely cannot face that direction.
You don't know, like, you don't have like access to the phone, you don't know.
Then you guess. But you have to guess. Like you have to try to say, okay, where is the Qibla? Maybe that way, and then you do it like that. Yeah, yes.
Since you could pray in a plane, say technically you can't stop in the car. You could pray in the car?
Technically speaking, if you cannot stop, there's some types of vehicles, and then you can pray in the seat in that situation, but then you should make it up later on. Because technically, we're not talking about like the husband refuses to stop. So now I had to pray. No, you tell him to stop. He should stop. Right? But there's some times where it's impossible. Like you're on a train, you're on a bus. The Greyhound is only going, if you get off, you're going to be out in the middle of nowhere. Then you have to sometimes, right? So there might be a reason that you pray in that situation. Yeah.
So one time, my MSA, we had like an iftar and then everyone prayed in the room. So I had to set up the prayer room, and I was practicing it by myself. But astaghfirullah, I forgot to check the direction, so I just set it up. And then people
Don't worry about it. You okay? Don't worry about it. Okay, let's move on. That you have to make sure, guys, listen up. Another condition of prayer, you have to make sure the time is actually in. So you have to make sure the time is in. If you pray before the time, doesn't count. So you can't say, I'm going to have work later on, and I don't know if I'm going to have wudu, so I'm going to pray my prayers before, and then inshallah it's fine. No, that doesn't count. You cannot do an advanced prayer, okay? Next thing, you have to have the intention to pray, which is obvious as well. It's in your heart. And then you have to say Allahu Akbar, tahrima, and you say that out loud, even if it's very softly. So you don't have to hear yourself like all the time, but you say it softly, like Allahu Akbar, like something very soft. You have to at least say that. You cannot just go. Thoughts is not your prayer, okay? You have to at least say it so quietly that microscopically you've said it. Now, some people, they pray their whole prayers, their whole life, just mouthing it without any breath. Alhamdulillah, there's a position in the Hanafi school that still counts. So don't worry. Don't be like some people, you hear them going, because they have OCD that I can't hear myself. don't worry about that. You whisper it softly, you're fine. Okay? Those are the conditions before you get into prayer. Okay? Now, we have 5 minutes left. Is there a question on this topic?
Yeah. Can you go back to the previous sentence if it's possible? Entrance of prayer time. So if would it be better to miss a prayer and then make it up, or if, for example, the plane is boarding and you're praying Asr and then Maghrib time is going to come in?
It doesn't count anyway. So if you prayed Maghrib in advance, it wouldn't count anyway. So it's not about better. It's just doesn't mean anything. You still don't have to make it up after. You see what I'm saying? You'd still have to make it up. Okay, so next one. Let's see. Okay, here are the fard aspects of prayer. We have few minutes left. I'm just going to list these, okay? These are the absolute bare bones essentials of the prayer. Number one, that you make tahrima. Allahu Akbar. Okay? Technically speaking, even if you said Subhanallah, it counts. Even if you said, yeah. So you don't actually have to say Allahu Akbar, you have to begin with a dhikr. But saying Allahu Akbar is wajib. So we're going to show you. So you say Allahu Akbar. There's no such thing, by the way, oh, I didn't make intention again. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, I didn't come out right. Discard that. So many people, you hear them going, Allahu Akbar, Allah, oh. Don't get into this OCD, right? You say Allahu Akbar, start. Next thing, you don't even have to lift up your hands. You can just say Allahu Akbar and you start it. Next thing, you should stand. So first is Allahu Akbar, then standing. If you are physically able. If you cannot stand, you sit down. You try to sit down on the ground. If you can't, then on a chair. If you can't, then on the bed, whatever. Like for example, for nafil prayers, you can sit down, but at half the reward. Okay, to Taraweeh, you can pray sitting down, half the reward. Even a sunnah prayer, you can sit down, half the reward. Okay, but you can do it. But fard and witr, you must stand up. Next thing, you have to recite a little bit of Quran, even if it's one verse. Even if it's one verse. So technically, reciting the Fatiha is wajib, but it's not fard. What is that supposed to mean? There's something very important. We'll end with this. In the Hanafi school, there are two types of requirements, obligations. One is fard. Usually comes from the Quran. Usually it is like beyond doubt. And then there's a second level of obligation slightly below it called wajib, in which it is proven from hadith. But hadith don't have the same level of authenticity, or you could say sureness, as the Quran. So this is why they said it's wajib. And there's often differences of opinion about wajib. Okay? So they both mean you have to do it, but one is slightly below. So you have to at least recite some Quran, even if it's one verse. That's the fard. Then you have to bow, even if it's for a moment. That's fard. Then you have to make sajda, even if it's just for a moment. And then you sit down, and if you don't even know the tashahhud, you just sit there for 15, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, for the amount of time it would take, and that is the fard. Because there's some people who don't know tashahhud. Right? At-tahiyatu lillahi wa salawatu wa tayyibat. If you don't know it, what do? You just sit there for that amount of time, and that's it, you're done. Then you have to leave the prayer by your own action. Meaning, assalamu alaikum, that's how you do it. But you have to leave with your own action. Okay? So that's how we'll stop. This is the fard of prayer, and we're going to continue now tomorrow for the last session. Please, guys, I'll try to be there 7 p.m. sharp. You all try to be there, and we'll just blow through all of this, okay? And if you have any questions, always, inshallah, you can ask. Assalamu alaikum.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allah.
What's it saying?
Allahu Akbar.
Yeah?
أشهد
It's
أن لا
sunnah to do
إله
this.
إلا الله.
It is sunnah to do this, but it's not fard.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله.